blood sample sits inside a courtroom. To one side of the room, a team of lawyers believes it will end the case forever. To the other side, a different team believes that same sample proves nothing, because somewhere between the crime scene and the lab, something went wrong. Before this case, DNA evidence was something most people had never heard explained in full. Neither side is arguing about who Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were. They're arguing about a molecule, and for the first time in history, the entire world is watching that argument happen live. This is the trial that turned DNA from a hidden laboratory tool into a household word. It existed, it was used, but it lived quietly inside labs, understood by scientists, trusted blindly by juries who had no real way to question it. That was about to change. In the mid-1990s, the brutal killings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman in Los Angeles set off an investigation that moved fast. Investigators collected physical evidence almost immediately, evidence they believed would become the backbone of the entire case. But here's what made this different from every trial before it. It wasn't just what the evidence said, it was that, for the first time, millions of people would watch scientists and lawyers argue over what that evidence actually meant, in real time, on live television. DNA became the star witness of the courtroom. The prosecution built their case around it, using it to place the suspect at the crime scene. But the defense didn't attack the science itself. They attacked something far more human, the people who handled it. Was the sample collected correctly? Was it stored correctly? Did it pass through enough hands, enough time, enough uncertainty to no longer be trusted? Suddenly, the courtroom wasn't just debating guilt or innocence. It was debating chain of custody, lab error, contamination. Terms that had never left scientific journals were now being repeated on the evening news. And that's when the real tension began, because the public wasn't just watching a murder trial anymore. They were watching two versions of the truth collide. Here's the problem the prosecution didn't expect. DNA is only as strong as the hands that collect it. It doesn't matter how accurate the science is if the process around it looks flawed. And once the defense raised the possibility of contamination, they didn't need to disprove the DNA. They only needed to make the jury doubt it. That single strategy would end up shaping the outcome of one of the most watched trials in history. We'll come back to why that mattered so much. Because this wasn't just a legal tactic. It was about to change how forensic science was treated in courtrooms everywhere. The trial was televised, and people who had never studied forensics in their lives were suddenly debating it at dinner tables. Could DNA be trusted? Could a lab make a mistake big enough to derail a case this serious? For the first time, ordinary viewers weren't just consuming a verdict. They were consuming the process, the arguments, the uncertainty, the science stripped down to something they could actually follow. A technical, clinical topic had become a national obsession. And underneath that obsession was a lesson nobody expected to learn from a criminal trial. Forensic evidence isn't just about what it proves, it's about how it's handled, documented, and explained. This is where everything shifted, not just for one trial, but for forensic science as a whole. After O.J. Simpson, DNA evidence could never go back to being a quiet, unquestioned tool used behind closed lab doors. The public now knew too much. Crime labs had to take scrutiny seriously. Law enforcement agencies had to tighten how evidence was collected and recorded. Lawyers on both sides of future trials now had a public that understood, at least a little, what chain of custody meant and why it mattered. The case had done something almost no trial before it had done. It had educated an entire generation of jurors before they ever stepped into a courtroom. But the story doesn't end with a simple lesson, because in a strange, almost contradictory way, the trial did two things at once. It made DNA more trusted by the public, proof that science could solve what human eyes alone could not. And at the exact same time, it made people realize science is not magic. DNA can be powerful, it can be decisive, it can connect a person to a place beyond any reasonable doubt. But if it's mishandled, if it's misunderstood, poorly explained, or improperly stored, it stops being the solution. It becomes the controversy. The O.J. Simpson trial didn't just dominate headlines for a season. It changed the conversation around forensic science permanently. Before this case, DNA was a hidden mechanism inside the justice system, trusted quietly, rarely questioned, barely understood outside a lab. After this case, it was something the entire world had watched be built, challenged, and dissected in public. Every trial that has used DNA evidence since has done so inside a system more transparent than it used to be, because the public demanded it. This was the trial that made the world pay attention to DNA.